Hello, humans and fellow travelers. Max here, talking to you again today. Today we are going to do chapter 7.2, A World of Mud and Soil. This is an interesting one, I promise you. Usual housekeeping here. This is the Amazon page where you can find the book. Please give me your support there, if possible. Our Rumble channel, where you can listen to this podcast series. The Brighteon channel, and the YouTube channel. I must say, it's very interesting to me because I consider this podcast series kind of a social experiment of sorts to see how these three different platforms react in terms of views. As I have several different topics in this book, I'm starting to noticing a pattern emerging here, which is very interesting. Depending on different subjects, I get more or less views on different platforms. This Tartaria issue, though, has rocked me a little bit because the YouTube crowd seems to be extremely interested in this topic, which is very peculiar to me. I don't understand why. But thank you very much for your support, guys. Please keep on moving as this story goes along, because I will try to explain to you some serious issues here. Now, I said in the end of the previous chapter that something terrible occurred. And I will now describe what many agree is the prevalent thesis of what happened at the time of these catastrophic events. There appears to have been a cataclysmic event that spread worldwide, a sort of Noah's flood kind of event. But no historical evidence is provided by academia. So we are stuck in our understanding. Or are we? What I can see and observe looking around us today, the history books does not mention anything about anything. We have to use our eyes and our discernment to put the pieces of the puzzle together ourselves. We look at these magnificent buildings across our realm, as described before, and we notice that they have something in common, in some places more than others. It does appear that many of these old structures has been at one time covered in mud and soil, sometimes a few meters, sometimes the entire building. Let me demonstrate with one picture here so that you can follow the logic as we move ahead. This is a picture from the old days of what appears to be a flooding. Now, this appears to be water, but if you look at it, you will certainly start to understand where I'm heading with this. So it does look more like a water flooding, and we do not know when this picture was taken, but it does resonate with what I'm trying to describe. Let's move on. The result of such an event would look something like this picture here that I show you now. Notice all that mud. Note how they moved the main entrance to the first floor with a wooden structure. Now, this wooden structure was obviously not part of the original building, there's no doubt. How this happened is unclear to us, as nothing has been documented, and we have not been shown anything. But I'm sure that if we would have access to the records in the Vatican, that alone would tell us a lot. On the right hand of your screen here, you have another Twitter post. It says here, Glasgow Christian Institute built in 1879, and it was finished 1 year later in 1880. That's obviously absurd. But what's interesting about this picture, as you see on the red arrow, there is a sunken window there. Why is that? They didn't dig out an entire basement, did they? Now, I could rationally imagine two different scenarios that would trigger such an event. One is soil liquefaction. This occurs when the condition of the soil is such that a disturbance, such as an earthquake, allows the groundwater to seep through the soil particles and disturb the surface, thus liquefying the ground and resulting in sinking buildings. I can recall this happening in Mexico City in 1985, where liquefaction was the cause of that exact damage. I will now show you a short little clip here that describes the exact process of soil liquefaction. Here we go. Now that is probably the nerdiest video I have ever seen, and whoever decided to put that music in the background needs to be checked into a mental hospital. Absolutely. But it does explain scientifically how all this works. Now the second cause could be, we don't know, landslides of mud caused by rain, a mud flood, so to speak. The buildings did not sink, but they were simply covered by mud and wet soil and would need to be dug out. Now, this theory does not stand, in my view, as much of the buildings we are to discuss are located on flatlands and no hills or slopes were present. I lean personally much more to the liquefaction theory, as this would explain why did this occur at the same extent around our realm. There are areas that were clearly impacted while others were not. This could be due to the density of the soil and the bedrock in various locations. For example, in Asia there are very few spots where this can be seen, while Russia, Europe and the Americas is very common, and most of the examples I'm about to demonstrate come from there. I find this case extremely intriguing, as we have the possibility with our own eyes to discover facts that has been in front of us all this time. We just did not rationalize it and understand what we're really looking at. This is called awakening, where I come from. Now behold, these are, what I will show you here now, are existing structures that sank. It's absolutely incredible what they found beneath. Look at this. That looks like an entire temple that has to be dug out. The second yellow house here, once they started digging, they found an entire floor underneath. Here you have a picture similar to the thumbnail of this video that you have seen already. You see how the buildings continue underground? And these are, note, these are not basements, because why would they follow the same architecture going down? A basement is not aesthetic, is it? But these columns here clearly belong to the building. Here's another one. Very intriguing indeed. You can see the building continuing down. And on your right side, you have the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Do you see the elevated stairway up to the first floor? And what do we see underneath? We see structures and columns continuing underground. Now these pictures we can see today because they actually did dig a big hole a few years ago, I think for a car park or something like that. But it's really intriguing to see, isn't it? We have this little picture here that is, I find absolutely astonishing. Look at how deep down these structures actually went. We have another one here, where the blue of this building finishes is the street level, and all the other structure, 2 complete floors, were completely submerged. On the right-hand side, we have Stockholm, Sweden, mid-1800s. Some might believe that the mud flood was just a tale, but look at what we see. Look at the amount of mud in this picture. Now, these images are from all over the world, so we can conclude that it is indeed a worldwide phenomenon. But what happened? We don't know exactly, but we can assume and reason around it for sure. I've seen a bit of information that could explain the reason behind it. For example, we have the Tunguska event that took place in Siberia, which I will show you here. Now, this event was a large explosion. It was a meteorite that hit Siberia and leveled millions and millions and millions of trees. An event like this could have triggered an earthquake that was felt around the world and triggered soil liquefaction in sensitive areas. However, this event occurred in 1908. It seems a little bit too close to the current day to be able to memory hold such a large event from our collective history. Still, we really cannot say we are completely in the dark. Now, we said that Russia was heavily affected by this event, and both Moscow and St. Petersburg were indeed heavily impacted by mud at the time of this supposed mud flood. I will now show you a couple of more pictures here. These old photos are just remarkable. What would we do without them? Here we go. So the bottom photo here is taken from 1886. The building and monument has notably sunk. So if you look at the top, the blue square there, you see a monument, a huge statue. You see how tall it is compared to the building? And look at the picture below. Basically half the monument is gone, and the building is half its size. This is the same building. On the right of the screen is another absolutely majestic photo of a dugout temple or church, it appears. We have pictures like this. It says here, these buildings were found, not built. When I look at things like this, I tend to agree. How can you not? We have pictures like this. We have, on the left, we have the Eiffel Tower in Paris. What do we see in the orange ring? That appears to be a doorway or something. Mexico City, old photo against new. In 1920, we can see that little square thingy on the ground floor. After digging it out, you see how high it is compared to the door. This building was sunk. Cincinnati, Ohio, we have a massive water reserve here that is no longer with us. The modern picture below, however, shows us the arches and the mud. Look how much this thing sunk. Truly remarkable. We proceed around the world. We have Mexico City. Similar situation to what we saw before. Look at those doorways. How deep down they were. We have Perth, Australia, where you have sunken windows. We have a church in the US that after they dug it out, they understood that the actual doorway was not a doorway at all. So, after having you shown all this, now we have to go in and analyze the buildings themselves. Know your buildings. You would now probably start thinking of this and seek out buildings in your area and see if they were indeed mud flood buildings or not. I know I have. There are some buildings that were constructed with actual basements at the time. Such basements were used for storage for food and other edibles, as it was a fresh place all year around with constant temperature. However, I do doubt that they would have used windows. I find it hard to believe when building these structures, the owners would dig a hole, make a foundation under the ground, and build on top of it. It would be a large waste of time and resources. One good tip to understand if it is indeed a mudflood building is to observe the decor on the building itself. If the submerged part used the same decor, you're looking at a mudflood building. If the underground part is bare and economic, you're probably looking at a normal basement structure. Now, the following pictures I will show you here are 100% mudflood buildings. And note the stairs reaching the first floor. Here we go. We have a building in Honolulu, Hawaii. Note the sunken windows and the staircase going up. The middle picture's unknown location, but that is obviously a window that is sunk. We have this building, a Capitol building somewhere in the US. You see how they dug out the side of the building to the basement? And we have a raised staircase. I will also show you this because this kind of proves the point, also from Twitter. This ancient picture here says, Classic Tartaria, massive ancient building in the background there, you see it? We repopulated around it. The Tartaria building left is still partially buried. We built new stairs. University Hall was a lone building when the University of Nebraska opened for its students in 1871 on the edge of Lincoln. There you see this glorious building in the background and the sheds surrounding it. So yes, we built the sheds, but we didn't build that building in the back, did we? Now I will show you another couple of interesting videos here to stimulate you, and I'll see you on the other side. These are 3 video clips I will run back to back, okay?
So we're back at it again, ladies and gentlemen. And if you could do me a big favor, smash those 4 buttons on the right-hand side. It really helps me a lot. But yeah, this is a photo of a mud flood building that was taken when they had an obvious issue with plumbing or sewer, and they just kept digging. And the more they dug, the more they found. If you could see the stairwell right there on the top with that round window, that was actually ground level. And what you see below is a next level. And it's gotta be 20 feet, maybe 25 feet buried under the ground, which is what I keep saying. Our history is hidden. The world's history is hidden. And keep your eyes open, ladies and gentlemen. Good luck. God bless. Sam out.
Russia is where you can find some of the most conclusive evidence of the mud flood. It should come as no surprise for those who know when you look at old world maps and you look at things like Russia's coat of arms and the relations with the Tartarian Empire in the last reset, the mud flood. These scenes that we see from Russia, the fully intact log cabins in Moscow, should come as no surprise why we see so much evidence of the last reset here in Russia. The Siberian forests, for example. What a huge difference less than 100 years make. Speaking of Siberia, you ever wondered why most of the world's forests are under 200 years old? It is because, in my opinion anyways, most of them were buried under the mud in the last reset less than 200 years ago. But this is just a small sampling of the hundreds of pictures I've collected of the mud flood from Russia. and even more so the thousands and thousands of pictures I've accumulated over the years from around the world. As I've said before, this is realm-wide, in every country, in every continent, in nearly every city. Let me know what city or country you want to see next, and I'll see what I can dig up for you. Question everything, friends. Until next time. Our buried past can be found all around us. Research the mudflood and follow Tartaria. Dig up the truth, friends. Our buried past.
So there you have it. 3 short clips that I hope proves the point. I will also show you this other very interesting little picture I found. You know how they say in all the old movies, how they built the railway in the US? Here it says on the internet there are many photos of 1850, 1900 years taken on the territory of both Americas. In these photos, a crowd of people is actively digging up the railroad tracks. Was it built by the natives or by the white immigrants? Why were the roads under a layer of soil 2 or 3 feet tall? So what were these people digging up? Were the railroads already there? Question. Another interesting picture here on your right side. These massive columns out of a temple somewhere, probably in Europe, maybe Greece, who knows. Look how tall these are after they dug them out. Those 2 dots are the same points. Absolutely fascinating. Now, I will conclude this video here by showing you a video from Ivar Anon that we mentioned in the previous chapter, who explains this in a brilliant fashion. So I will leave you with that video, and after that, you will feel exactly like this guy on the picture you see. Fascinating, isn't it? So with that said, guys, I will leave you to it, and please enjoy this 13-minute clip that will set you all straight. So that's all for me today. Max out. Peace to you all.
Children ask the most vital of questions, and adults, in their foggy stupor, usually provide the most unsatisfactory answers, often regurgitating learned nonsensical information that leave the child's imagination unfulfilled. Squelching along these muddy 19th century roads, observing their surroundings, a child may ask, why did they build the windows so low to the ground? And what an excellent question. Yes, why indeed did they build windows on ground level? For you see, the people we see in these photographs, sadly, did not build this architecture. And maybe some of them, at some point in their busy day-to-day life, ask the exact same question. We see it everywhere. Windows at ground level. Windows partially below ground level. first floor entrances raised from the ground level. Steps leading down to entrances below ground level. We can find this in almost every major city across our realm, in both old photographs and when we walk in the streets today. And what does it tell us? That a society with access to modest construction tools and horse and car constructed their infrastructure by first spending countless amounts of hours and energy clearing land with a depth of over 3 meters to begin their construction. Building basement floors is incredibly hard work. Since the 20th century, large powered excavation machines, such as backhoes and front-end loaders, have reduced the time and manpower needed to dig a basement dramatically, as compared to digging by hand with a spade. Perhaps you could say that our historical ancestors were just that dedicated to the architecture they built. And you could say that many of the sunken buildings we see are actually due to elevations and depressions in the natural landscape. The official narrative, which is always full of inconsistencies, perhaps would suffice if it was not for contemporary excavation. When we look at photographs such as this, it immediately dawns upon us that what we are seeing are windows and doors 2 to 3 meters below the ground surface. Why are there windows and doors underground? What is this that we see in our cities? Natural soil accumulation over time? Geologists have never been able to ascribe a consistent value to worldwide natural topsoil accumulation, because it is impossible. Some regions of our realm experience consistent topsoil accumulation, whereas other regions actually experience consistent erosion. Many historians and archaeologists have noted that many cities over the centuries have been destroyed through war, and natural phenomena such as earthquakes, volcanic ash, and flooding. Aren't these just the layers of previous civilizations? No, they are not. We see over and over again whole floors of buildings consistent with the architecture existing above the layer of ground. You see, what lies beneath is not the unfamiliar traces of previous generations, but of the same generation that built these structures. And once you really see this kind of sunken, buried infrastructure that exists in such prevalence across our world, you can never unsee it. We see that the foundations of old churches are actually the original first floors, with consistent entrances and windows. We see mosaics unearthed. We see pillars, columns and arches that were originally much larger, and it was the layer of soil that reduced their size, as if they weren't big enough to begin with. And like with the 1964 earthquake in Nagata, Japan, we also find many so-called ancient structures that are leaning, as if at some point the soil beneath these structures loosened and liquefied. We have the Sehurzen Church Tower and Our Dear Lady at the Mountain Church Tower in Germany, the Tiger Hill Pagoda in China, the Leaning Tower of Neveyansk in Russia, the Leaning Temple of Huma in India, Oud Kirk in the Netherlands, the Tower of Zaragoza in Spain, and, of course, the Tower of Pisa. The official liars of the world try to justify the buried and tilting structures we see, filling our heads with stories of antiquity and ever-changing geology. But it becomes trickier for them when we turn our attention to America. If we are to believe their narrative, then all of the buildings we see in 19th century photographs of the burgeoning American cities are newly constructed. Why do we see famous structures, such as the Washington Capitol building, with consistent infrastructure that buries very deep into the ground? And again, the inconsistencies do not add up. Why would an underdeveloped people waste resources, energy, and time constructing the foundations of the Capitol building to be consistent with the column style we find above the surface? The foundations did not have to feature columns. Columns, we are told, are a stylistic choice, not a functional one. So why would they do this? In a nutshell, they wouldn't. We see images that suggest that the people of the 19th century were actually concerned with moving a lot of the vast amount of mud we see, leveling the ground and excavating existing structures. The consistency and prevalence of buried architecture across our realm indicate that whatever happened was a worldwide event, despite regional differences in natural topsoil accumulation and erosion. And there is no official narrative explanation that justifies the buried architecture we see. No explanation provided to justify the amount of mud we see in 19th century photographs of our cities. On the roads, mud piles from clearing, the roads uneven, the land ravaged, but the architecture grand, perfect, and intact. Applauded by literary scholars for his use of fog as an opening simile and metaphor to paint a portrait of London as a corrupted hub amidst burgeoning industrialization, many often overlook that Charles Dickens's 1852 novel Bleak House actually opens with a different image. London, Michaelmas term lately over, and the Lord Chancellor sitting in Lincoln's Inn Hall. Implacable November weather, as much mud in the streets as if the waters had but newly retired from the face of the earth.